I'm sure you've experienced this before. You buy a new case, you love it at first, but after a few months you start wondering, was this really the right choice? How does it hold up over time? Does it still look good after a year of use? And most importantly, would I buy it again? Today we're talking about my Apple FineWoven case in the color Taupe, which I've been using daily for over a year with my iPhone 15 Pro. I'll share my personal experience with this case, how it feels, how it has worn over time, how well it has protected my iPhone, and whether or not I think it was worth the price. If you already have this case or considering getting one, make sure to stick around because I'll give you my personal long-term review. When I first unboxed this case, my initial impressions was really positive. I had always used Apple's leather cases before, so switching to FineWoven was a completely different experience. I was really curious to see how it would feel because Apple discontinued leather and replaced it with this fabric-like material. Right away, I like the taupe color. It's not too flashy, but it's also not boring. It's a nice subtle brown that I think pairs well with my black iPhone 15 Pro. Compared to Apple silicone cases, the FineWoven case definitely looks and feels more premium. It has a unique texture, not as soft as leather, just a nice smooth feel that gives the phone a refined look. I would say it feels like a good pair of chinos, and it has a secure feeling when you're holding it in your hand. And that's one of the biggest advantages for me, the grip. I've tried cases they were too slippery and others that felt too sticky. Both are annoying. Either your phone slides out of your hand or it tracks dust and lint like a magnet. The FineWoven case, however, strikes a great balance. It still feels the same as it did on day one. It doesn't have a rough surface that wears down over time, and it doesn't get greasy or tacky either. That's a huge plus. Another thing that I appreciate is that it doesn't slip out of my hand. If you often use your phone one-handed, you don't want to constantly worry about dropping it. With this case, I always felt like I had a good grip, which is important for everyday use. Now let's talk about the part that most people are probably curious about. How has this case held up after more than 1 year of use? Of course there are signs of wear. The edges where I hold the phone the most have darkened slightly, and the back has a few areas where the fabric looks a bit worn, especially around the corners. I also noticed that sometimes small scratches appear on the surface when I run my fingernail over it. But what's interesting is that these scratches tend to disappear within a day or two. It's almost like the material can heal itself, which I think is pretty cool. Even more fascinating, if you intentionally scratch the case with your finger and then rub over it, the scratch fades away almost immediately. This actually reminds me of how Apple's old leather cases behaved over time. They developed a patina, but minor marks could be rubbed out. It seems like Apple has designed FineWoven to have similar properties in terms of how it wears, which I find really impressive. Now onto the most important question. Has this case protected my iPhone well? The answer is absolutely. I've accidentally dropped my iPhone on concrete 2 or 3 times while using this case. You know that moment of panic when your phone slips out of your hand and you just pray that it's okay? Yeah, I've been there. Luckily, this case did a great job at absorbing the impact. My iPhone didn't get any scratches or damage, and even the case itself barely showed any signs of the drops. No cracks or anything. In terms of protection, I have to give Apple credit for making a solid case. So the big question, would I buy this case again? I would say yes, but with some hesitation. I'm really glad I tried it out because it's a well-made case with a premium feel. But if Apple still offered a leather case, I would probably go back to leather just because I personally prefer the way it ages and feels in the hand. With that being said, I do think the FineWoven case is a great option if you're looking for something different from silicone, plastic, or leather. It's been my daily case for over a year and I never felt like I needed to replace it. If you've used this case yourself, let me know in the comments, how has this held up for you? Have you noticed similar wear marks or does your case still look great? Alright guys, hope you enjoyed this video, and if so, then give it a like to let me know, and I'll see you in the next one.